In 2 weeks, we will have the most important competitive event for Warhammer 40K outside of the World Championships of Warhammer, which will be in Barcelona, Spain later this year. It is going to be the WTC, or the World Teams Championships, combined with the War Master Super Major. This is a very big deal. So let's just jump right into it. Guys, I'm Doc Crump. I'm a top 100 player, and I'll be representing Team Norway at the World Teams Championships this year. And I'm going to be kind of breaking down for why this is a big deal. And I want you to understand exactly how it impacts things that are going to be happening in your local meta. So this is the preeminent teams tournament in the entire world. You're going to currently have like 46, I think, teams that are going to be gathering with 8-man teams. And these are going to be composed of presumably the top 8 players from each country. Now, in reality, it's more like the 8 players out of the top 15 of each country, because some people can't make it. You know, you've got travels, you got things, regardless. But it's going to be a 4-day tournament, 7 rounds, that is going to be brutal Warhammer. And if you don't know how teams works, it works a little bit different than singles, but we'll get back into that here in just a little bit. There's something that you've noticed, most likely, over the last few weeks, few months of Warhammer. There's been like kind of a weirdness in YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever you're getting your Warhammer information. Whenever WTC season comes up, there is a weird amount of secrecy and misdirection that is in the air. You're going to hear some puzzling head scratchers, some weird takes. You're going to hear some people who are just not talking about certain armies or certain builds that are probably good enough to be spoken about. And the reason for that is because every single country treats the WTC very seriously. And so content creators who may be on those teams tend to want to keep secrets that maybe they have uncovered for the competition under wraps, because they don't want to reveal it to their competition. So teams functions a little bit differently than singles. So let's just hop on into the next slide so I can kind of break some of this down. First off, we've got 46 teams, and there are 6 brand new teams. The way the competition works is that we are going to have 7 days of competition. Or I'm sorry. Well, actually, yes, there will be 7 days of competition, but there are 4 days of the WTC. And it's 7 rounds. First 3 rounds are actually going to be in a pod organization. So we are separated into groups of 4, and this will be represented as such. So, for example, the team that I'm representing, which is Team Norway, I'm going to be in pod number 7, which is against England, Ireland, and Hungary. Teams are separated by their seeds. So last year, we in Team Norway didn't do particularly well, so we dropped from seed 2 to seed 3. And the reason that the structure is in place is to make sure that, like, the championship ground, which is likely going to be between 2 seed tier 1 armies or tier 1 teams, is not going to be done in like the first round of the game. So that's why they do the pod phase. It actually works really well. All right. Now, what makes teams so dang different from singles? First off, you have army selection. So out of 8 players on each team, some of you with your local team tournaments might be running 5-man teams, which is also very cool. But out of 8 people on each team, 1 of each army represented. That means that you are never going to have more than 1 Space Marine player on the same team. Now, you might have a T-Suns player and a Death Guard player, but that's because they're separate codexes. So the way they define army is a separate codex, not a supplement. So a Blood Angels player couldn't be on the same team as a Dark Angels player. Those would both be Codex Space Marines. So they do it based off of codex. If you take allies, the allies will take up an army slot. So if I take Space Marines with a Calidus Assassin, then no one else on the team could take Imperial Agents allies, for example. Then what happens is we have to determine what dispositions are going to be played. So every disposition must be represented on the team. So at least 1 of each disposition is on the team, and maximum 2 of each disposition on the team. So you can't run an 8-man teams where every single person is playing Purge the Foe, for example. One of them has to be a disruption. You can maybe put 2 on Take and Hold, maybe put 2 on Recon. That's the way it works. Now, this is the whole thing that makes teams super weird, and why you guys need to be informed. Because if you take the list that you're about to see released on Monday out of context, you're going to think some armies are better than they actually are, and you're going to think some armies are worse than they actually are. In a team's environment, you have a certain amount of control over your map. So based off of where you are in the pairings process, because there's a pairings system, 8 people versus 8 people, you have to figure out who's going to be playing against who. though based off of how the pairings goes, you can have control over which map you're playing. Let's say you're playing a take and hold army, but you cannot play on search and destroy. Well, because of the structure of teams, there is actually control to make it so that you really will never play on that search and destroy table, right? So that allows you to build very different armies than what you could otherwise. Also, due to pairings control, and I'll just give you an example of how this works. Let's say your 8-man team is against my 8-man team. You've got Chaos Space Marines, normal Space Marines, whatever. And we have to determine who is going to be playing against each other. So what would happen is each team would put forth their very first defender. So I would say defend with Space Marines, and you would defend with Chaos Space Marines. At this point in time, I get to choose 2 armies from my team, and you get to choose 2 armies from your team that will attack the first defender. So if I put down Space Marines, you might say, oh, well, orcs are really good into Space Marines. I'll attack with orcs, and I will attack with Dark Eldar, because I have a Dark Eldar list that's made that really good into Space Marines. So then me as the defender, I get to say, all right, my Space Marine army hates orcs, but I like playing against Dark Eldar, so I will choose to play against the Dark Eldar. So you present 2 attackers, the defender chooses who they defend against, or who they will end up playing with. This is how pairings is done. And because of this, you have a limited amount of control over who you will be playing against. Let's say you have an army that hates monsters and vehicles, but is really good against anti-infantry. Well, you would just never choose to play against Imperial Knights, and you would always choose to play against infantry. So you might end up seeing some weird compositions in teams that work incredibly well, but do not work well in singles. Because in singles, you can't dodge the Imperial Knights or the Chaos Knights or the whatever. But in a team's context, you will never play against those armies due to the pairings process. So you might perform very, very well. So that's why we're going to see some wild team comps. And let's talk about how those lists are going to be coming out here. So it's going to be an absolute wild week. It's going to be an absolute wild week. It's from August 11th to the 13th. We're going to see the War Master, which takes place right before the WTC or the World Teams Championship. The War Master is a super major that is going to be made up of, oh man, sometimes it's up to 400 plus players. It's going to be, I think, 6 to 8 rounds based off of how shadow rounds go. And it is basically made up of a lot of the same players for the WTC. Although a lot of times you're going to have like the coaches that are not playing in the World Team Championship, they'll also play in the War Master. So you'll get different blood, and you'll get a lot of local people who come out there. It's a very big tournament, very high skill level, and it's absolute blast. And a lot of the WTC players will be utilizing it as a warm-up for the WTC itself. Then you'll have some people who will not participate in the War Master because, well, playing like 16 rounds of Warhammer in a week can be exhausting, and maybe you don't want to do those early rounds, and you just want to save it all for the WTC, which is the real steak. It's not it's the entree of the week. The War Master is like the really delicious appetizer, right? So it immediately will go into the WTC, which is going to take place from the 13th to the 16th. Now, these events, these games will be streamed. I know Joe from War Games Live is going to be there. He's there basically every year. Super nice guy, by the way. If you've ever get the chance to meet him in person, buy the guy a beer. He's a rock star. And a lot of the teams are going to have their own individual dedicated streamers. So, for example, Team Sweden will have Vizsla Wargaming there. Team England is going to have 6++ Gaming. And then Team Australia will have Risky Rollers, who are dedicated streaming just their countries. So it's a great time to be a fan of Warhammer because you'll be able to follow your country's team across the competition. Now, if you don't have a dedicated stream, don't worry. You still have plenty of opportunities to get picked up on streams against some of these other countries. There's a lot of opportunity for you to interact and to really root your country on, which is pretty freaking sick. That being said, I want to say this to Team England. There's no sky camera to save you on this one, baby. Norway's coming for you. Anyway, just get ready for it because I'm going to talk mad crap the entire time because that's what I do. It's fun. All right. Let's talk about some of these bonkers lists, okay? Currently, your lists are actually all on lock. The reason for this is we need to make sure that the lists are actually legal. So it's so early in the edition, like maybe someone forgot to attach a leader, maybe someone got a war gear. So there is duties when we're trying to go over like 400+ lists. Because like let's see, it's 46 teams. Let me do some quick math for you guys. 46 teams times 8 players. How many players is that? It's not 400, but 46 times 8. Ooh, not 146 times 8. 46 times 8. So it's 368 players at the WTC this year. So every single list needs to be checked to make sure that it's legal. So the lists are not currently visible on BCP, but they should be visible, I believe, on Monday. Because right now there's a process to make sure that you know, everything you put in was actually legal. They don't want people spending thousands of dollars flying across the world and showing up with a list that's illegal just to get a yellow card in turn one. So it's a little bit different than other events. There is a list lock process where we check to make sure all lists are legal and we fix the issues if they are necessary. So they should be revealed on Monday. And when they do, yeah, don't worry. We're going to be doing a live stream talking about some of these wild lists and how we think they're actually going to operate, because this will actually be defining the meta all the way through to the World Championships of Warhammer in December. So we will see some crazy competitive lists. And what I want you guys to understand, when you see these lists, do not be dismayed if you don't see your current army on there, because there is a wild difference between a very successful teams list and a very successful singles list. Let me give you a great example of it. Dark Angels, okay? You're 100 going to be seeing the Company of Hunters with the Raven Wing detachment. Forgot the name of it. The one that allows you to ignore cover on your land speeder vengeances. You're going to be seeing this army. It's going to be like 18 Black Knights with 3 squads of Ravenwing Command Squads. There's going to be Samael. There's going to be like triple Land Speeder Vengeances. This will just happen, and you're going to see a lot of countries running it. This can be a very good teams list because the skew of the build can be exceptionally difficult for many armies to deal with. So it's a great teams list because it can get a very high points differential in scoring, which can lead to very good results for their team. Versus, let's say, a Wrath of the Rock Dark Angels list, which is an extremely powerful list right now, but it doesn't win by a lot of points. It wins by 5 to 10 points. Because in teams, the amount of points you win by is very relevant for the game total, because the game total is scored off of a differential. So if I win a game, say, by 6 victory points over you, it's actually an 11 to 9 victory, because we score on a 20-point sliding scale. And that's how you get your game points for teams. So bigger victories and smaller losses are a much bigger deal in teams than they are in individuals. So this list that might just win by a lot of points is going to be much more valuable in a team setting than it would be in a single setting. Not saying it's bad in singles, by the way, to be clear. Right, it's very good in singles as well. But certain singles armies might be created specifically just to win by a few points. Like my Wrath of the Rock list, which is incredibly strong in this edition, only wins by a few points. It wins by 5, 6, 8 points. It does not win by 30 plus points. That's just not the way it's designed to do, which makes it a much less useful teams list. So just because the style of army that you love, you're not seeing reflected in the teams builds that you're going to see on Monday when these lists are revealed, doesn't mean your army's not good. It just means that maybe it's created specifically for a singles context, not for a teams context. So that is what we got to think about when you're considering all of these teams builds. All right, let's finish this thing off, guys. What I want you to do is I want you to tune in, because this is going to be an absolutely wild week of Warhammer 40K. You're going to see the best players in the world. The Art of War guys will be there. They're awesome, by the way. Shout out to Nick. He's built such a cool team of great people. Freaking Liam VSL, who is one of the best players in the world. He's going to be there with Team Belgium. You'll see Innes Wilson of StatCheck. He'll be there. The who's who of Warhammer is going to be playing, and they're going to be duking it out. And it's going to be an absolute blast. It's going to be a week of fun and excitement. If you ever want to attend, I highly recommend you attend at least the War Masters. Let's say you're not able to make your country's team, which, by the way, you can if you dedicate yourself. Just contact whoever's in charge of your country's team, and ask them what the process is for getting good. If you're in America and you want to join Team America, bro, just contact the guys. You can do it on Discord. You can shoot the Art of War guys a message. They can hook you up with it because they tend to be in charge of it. Previously, in previous years, Sean Naden was in charge of the team. I think right now it's John Lennon is the captain of the team. It could be Anthony Vanilla. I'm not sure. But ask the people, you get around, get into contact with the people who are in charge of your individual country's team, and you will be able to make the team if you fulfill the requirements for making the team. But if you don't make the team, you can always join the War Masters, which is an amazing event right before the WTC. And it's an absolute blast. You get to meet the who's who, you get to play the who's who, and you have an amazing week of Warhammer in Mechlin, Belgium, which is a beautiful city. So with that, guys, I can't wait to cover a lot of this WTC stuff with you. During the week, I will be doing daily check-ins for the War Master. Not for the WTC. It's a little bit more exhausting, so I'll do a wrap-up at the end of it. But I'll do daily check-ins with you guys for the War Master itself. And until next time, crump on. Bye-bye.